everyone, and welcome to PrepTalk podcast. I'm your host, Vartika Bhandari. For today's episode, we have with us one of Tutela's alumni, Baltej Miglani. To brief you a little about Baltej before we get into the questions, he bagged a super score of 35 on his ACT exam and got admitted to the University of Southern California. In this episode, we will be discussing Baltej's journey through standardized test preparation and the hard work he put into creating a standout student resume that helped him secure admission to his dream university. We will also be talking about his current experiences in college and the challenges and surprises he has encountered so far. So, with that being said, let's start our podcast. Hello, Baltej. Welcome to Prep Talk podcast. We are so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity and I'm excited to talk to you guys.
We are very excited too. So, I think without further ado, let's begin with the first question.
Awesome, let's get to it.
Yeah. So, can you tell us about your standardized test prep journey? What were some of the challenges you faced and how did you overcome them?
So I actually took the ACT and I took it twice. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I got very lucky because my super score was much higher than the individual scores that I got both times.
Okay.
Uh, I think the first time around, one of the great aspects of like my test prep process was the fact that I took both of my tests during the summer break. So I had a
Mm-hmm.
pretty extended summer break. I was off, the first time I took the test, I was switching schools. So I was off from basically April or May until
Mm-hmm.
August. And I had that entire time from May, June, and July to prepare for it. But I think one of the biggest problems that I faced was that my test scores at the very end started to stagnate. I'm somebody who struggles from academic burnout, and I feel that I was at certain times I was practicing so much that I was getting questions that I knew wrong because
Mm-hmm.
of like a certain level of anxiety that I felt, or like a certain level of, you know, just guilt that I felt for not getting those questions right the first time. So the test score stagnation was something that I struggled with a lot. But I feel that both the times that I gave the test, they lined up with my preparation schedule so well that before my practice test scores could start tapering anymore, I gave the actual test, and I'd say I did pretty well, and I was in the ballpark of whatever I was getting on the practice
Mm-hmm.
tests at those times.
Okay, so as you mentioned that you gave two ACT attempts, right? So from the first
Yes.
attempt, you must have learned something that you know you followed into your second attempt. That understanding this thing that okay, I don't have to make the same mistakes that I did in the first one, and maybe this is my learning from the first one that you know inculcated in the second attempt, and that really helped you get a super score of 35.
So I feel that I knew the one thing that I did that I was confident about was that I know what I got wrong in the previous
Mm-hmm.
test. So
Mm-hmm.
I know
Right.
what areas to work on.
Right.
And but other than that, given the fact that I gave one of my attempts in 2019, in the summer of 2019, and I gave the
Mm-hmm.
second attempt in July of 2020, which was bang in the middle of lockdown, and I
Mm-hmm.
prepared online for that. The two scenarios are completely incomparable.
Right.
However, I knew from the previous attempt, I already knew the content.
Mm-hmm.
I had covered most of it in high school because by the time I got around to my second attempt, I was a junior in high school. I was an 11th grader. I knew what sections I was getting most of my questions wrong in. So I
Mm-hmm.
just practiced those a little bit more. And I think that like from what I know, the ACT questions are sort of randomized. They're picked from a question bank. So
Mm-hmm.
depending on the attempt that you give, some sections can be harder than others, depending on the time that you give the test at, right? I think though that played a very good role. The questions that I found easier or the topics that
Mm-hmm.
I was more confident about the second time around, those ended up coming on the sections that I had scored badly in the last time around. So that was what was able to improve my that was what allowed me to improve my sectional score in places that I had not scored so well previously, and that was what ultimately led to a better super score. I'd say the preparation that I had from last year, the maturity and the ability to deal with test anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
that came with 1 year of doing IB, and in general, a little bit of luck and different testing environments were what led to a different score and improvement in in certain sections that I did badly in earlier, and therefore an overall improved super score.
All right. I think giving two attempts is rather better than just going for one if you haven't scored that well and not being
Absolutely.
disheartened the first time, right? So the thing is, in the first one, you actually get to know what the exam is about. You get to understand where you're going, where you're giving the test. You get to understand the
Right,
environment that you
absolutely.
will be testing in. So the second one
Exactly.
eventually improves much better since you have the experience and known to the environment.
I think I think it did. I would say my performance in both areas was on par because I'm somebody who
Mm-hmm.
struggles with testing anxiety. So I'm bound to get something wrong on a test. There has never been a test in the last 5 years that I haven't gotten something wrong on. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I improved on the things that I got wrong originally, and I had the super scoring system that was on my side, and that
Yeah.
eventually helped me get a better super score and made me eligible to apply to a great school like USC. I would definitely say that take a second attempt. Someone should take a second attempt only if they feel it is the right thing to do for them.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone ends up where they belong. And if part of that process is taking one ACT or one SAT attempt, then so be it. If part of that is taking three SAT attempts, if you can do it, if you want to do it, absolutely go for it. It has
Mm-hmm.
to be based on your own comfort level.
Right. Right. So let's move on to our next question. How did you approach studying for the test, and did you use any specific study materials or strategies that you found particularly helpful?
So I work with this philosophy and I like use it even right now in college.
Mm-hmm.
You have all the resources to prepare for a test that you need to give and to succeed in an academic environment at all times. So the
Mm-hmm.
syllabus is complete. There is nothing out of the syllabus that will ever come. So it is just your responsibility. I feel that it is just your responsibility as a student to make the best of the to use all the resources that you have. So I had Tutela as a resource. I had your content. I had all your books. I had the practice test. I had a practice test portal, which emulated
Mm-hmm.
the actual environment because when I was taking the ACT, it had become computerized. It had
Okay.
like it was actually a new thing that it had become computerized very recently. So the fact that there was that portal that allowed me to that simulated that environment,
Mm-hmm.
I think that I think that was very helpful. Um, I did use beyond whatever material that Tutela gave me and beyond those lessons. I think I did use like a little bit of Khan Academy to basically brush up the doubts that I have. But
Mm-hmm.
even though for standardized tests the syllabus tends to be a little bit broad, I think it helps to know that the knowledge you've gathered so far is enough. These tests these tests are not designed to be tough or designed to stump you or designed to
Mm-hmm.
for only 1% of the test takers to pass them or like a very small percentage of the test takers to pass them and do well in them. They're designed to test your discipline and your ability to make the best use of all the resources that you have.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving on to our third question. How did you
Mhm.
balance your test prep and your other responsibilities such as schoolwork and extracurricular activities? Because we know, a lot of things have been going on in a student's life when they are, in their 10th to 12th class phase. They have to understand where they're going to go to college and they have to finalize a
Absolutely.
school and they have to for someone who is going to studies for abroad for their college, they have to take care of a lot of things. And I'm talking
Right.
about the student resume, and that should stand out. So how did you manage all those things that were going, and still made it to the dream school that you did?
Coffee definitely helps.
Of
That's a
course.
huge, like, the caffeine dependency is real. I
That's true.
probably spent. I think my college application process definitely led to my crippling Starbucks addiction right now. But I think one thing that I had on my side was my large summer breaks. They were like large chunks of time that I had off from school. And
Mhm,
given that during the time that I was working heavily on my resume between my 10th and 11th grade, I was switching schools. That gave
mhm,
me the opportunity of like this ripe 4 month period where I
mhm.
could just completely focus on building myself and understanding what my application is going to look like. So I spent a lot of time doing music. So I did music for 6 years. That was a very big
That's
part of
nice.
my profile. So
Mhm,
I think during that summer I was doing a lot actually. I performed 2 songs in a concert in front of like 300 people.
that's nice.
I emceed that same concert. I was like, and yeah, that was a very big part of what I was doing that summer. I was also writing my book, which was my hook and my like actual passion project that would ultimately go on to, I think, differentiate me from the rest of the applicant pool. And that was something that I was very, very
True.
passionate about.
Mhm,
And I was obviously preparing for the ACT. And since I was switching from CBSE to IB, I was reading. Uh, I was doing some light reading when it came to like the IB content.
mhm.
Before I started my first year of IBDP in August. Uh, I think one of the things that did help was um, how supportive my family were. I had someone to get me from point A to point B at all times. There was never Transport was never an issue for me. So even if
Mhm,
I was living in Gurgaon at the time. We just moved to Gurgaon. Um, if I had to go get to Tutela and then go from Tutela to my music to practice for my concert in Horst Khas village, and then come back and then find a coffee shop to like sit down and write my book in. The fact that there was somebody there to get me from point A to point B was really, really helpful. And I think at the same time, I knew I was singularly focused. So apart from doing all of these things that ultimately led to the creation of a good profile of a good profile. I knew a good profile was my goal, and I knew that I wanted to build those things, but I was also genuinely interested in all of the things that I was doing. And therefore I not only had the motivation but the ability to put in that time. I think there were two sides to it.
mhm.
Definitely. But I feel like it comes down to the fact that I did have to sacrifice certain parts of like my life and like the time and how I could use my time. Uh, I remember not being in touch with a lot of my friends from my old school during that time. Uh, I think that was also a time when I gained quite a lot of weight. That was not something that I'm extremely proud of. I was not eating the best. So I think I had a very singular and I had a very I'm somebody who has a very one track mind. And I think that at that point in time, my mind was focused on building the best profile that I could, working on all of these projects that I think I sacrificed a little bit when it came to my personal and social life.
But I think now you feel it's all worth it, and now you have made up for the lost time that you have been in USC for 3 years now.
2 2 years, and I'm just coming up on
2 years,
2 years.
sorry.
Yeah,
But
no,
now
that's
I
okay.
think you feel it's worth it, don't you?
I feel like there's definitely pros and cons to it.
Of course.
I don't regret it, And I don't know whether I would change it. But sometimes I do think back to, oh, I should have gotten coffee or lunch with my friends at a certain point in time. Oh, maybe I should have gone to the gym 4 times a week. Maybe I should have found a sport that I liked. That would have led to the building of other habits that are important in your adult life. So
But then,
a one
yeah,
track mind is great. I enjoy having the one track mind that I do have. I think it's one of my superpowers. Like, and that's not a
I'm
humble
sure.
brag. I genuinely do. But I think but that's not what being an adult is about. So I think if I'm not just focused on those one things, I might have learned to be a good adult a little bit sooner.
But then there is opportunity cost, to everything. If you want to get a good
Absolutely.
score, you have to let go of some things in order to give time to the things that matter at that point, right? Had you gone to
Definitely.
those parties or had you attended that dinner, you might have not spent that time in learning what you did. And also, since you mentioned that you shifted from CBSE to IB, right? And that was a
Right.
major shift because
Right.
CBSE and IBs are, poles apart when it comes to the curriculum. And
Yeah.
to in that shift, keeping the head towards academics was very much important for you in that time. And had you not done that, you would not have been here, right? In USC, doing
Definitely.
the course that you are doing, everything. With that being said, what is the course that you're pursuing right now? What is the major?
Right. So I initially came in as a global health major at the School of
Mm-hmm.
Medicine here at USC, but
Mm-hmm.
right now I've switched to a program called International Relations and Global Economy.
That's nice.
And I feel that that's something that I found a passion for while at USC. And
Mm-hmm.
USC obviously has great economics faculty and great political science faculty now. We're at the cutting edge of political science research at the moment. So I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity that I had to switch my major.
That's good to know.
So, with this, we end the first part of the podcast with Baltej. Stay tuned for the second part next week, where Baltej speaks about his experience at the University of Southern California. Also, don't forget to share the podcast further with your friends and family for more such insights on SAT, ACT, APs, and college prep. Do consider following our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.